hang about to the end of the video because I'm going to be telling you why, no matter your age, not particularly how you look either, women, often young women, will come up to you here in the Philippines and ask that question. Part of the vernacular here, are you alone? Today's little chat or little piece is really something I had in mind, entitled Are You Alone? But it's really about finding relationships abroad. 2 or 3 examples of different types of loneliness or different types of relationships. When I was still in Europe, living in the UK, I'd never really come across Filipinas, their culture, never really met one. Wasn't aware of them. And then I just moved to a community where there were some quite well-to-do people, quite successful people who had a career in banking. I think there was one guy who had a career in, he was an accountant. He's quite high up in accountancy. Transpired they lived near me, they have much bigger houses than me, a lot more money, they were much closer to retirement. So I was in the south of England, near the New Forest, and about 4 or 5 of them, they all had these beautiful, slightly younger Asian wives, Southeast Asian wives, who turned out to be Filipinas. And they were mostly from a bank in Hong Kong, where they'd worked and lived. And during their time there, they met these other overseas foreign workers, because that's basically what they were. And, you know, the relationships have started and they stuck with it, and everything was absolutely fine, to the point where they married, made their families with these Filipinas, and they'd come back, in this particular case, to the UK. Now, there's lots of examples of this all across Australia, Europe, United States. And I just wanted to cite this as one type of relationship, and it was pretty much a relationship that I came to the Philippines with. So you've got the guys who are already married. So they've been abroad themselves, they've met the Filipina, not in the Philippines, but working as an OFW, as an overseas foreign worker, where the Filipinas were also working as OFWs. So these guys were working in Hong Kong. They met their Filipinas there, they married. They've now got families in the UK, and they're either retired or they're close to retirement. So that's a pretty established thing. I had a similar experience. I was in the Middle East. I met my wife, and now I've retired and I've moved to the Philippines. So one of the guys who met his Filipino wife in Hong Kong, they decided on Malaysia, not the Philippines. They felt that Philippines for some reason was not suitable for them, so they went to Malaysia. The other guys went back to the Philippines, and another guy, he keeps a place in the UK, and he toos and fro's between with his Filipina's family, and that's how they live. So you've got these ready-made relationships. So that's one type of thing that you might be experiencing, and you might be trying to figure out how you're going to make that move. There's another guy who lived near me before I moved out to the Philippines, who I guess he's 10, maybe 15, yeah, he's about maybe 10 to 15 years younger, as is his wife. His wife's a Filipina. His wife is a doctor working in the British Health Service, and I can see he's not really mentally prepared for the retirement yet, but at some point he's going to have to think about it. I don't think he quite realises what it entails. I don't think he quite realises what the possible, I'll say, sacrifices are in terms of his lifestyle now, if he wants to stay with his Filipina. For sure the Filipina will want to rejoin or be near her family, and for sure she'll want to be in the Philippines. And this is often the driving factor. It was a driving factor with me, but I'm quite happy to go with it, to be honest with you, because I'm used to the expatriate lifestyle. But I'm not sure he is. Maybe he'll adapt, maybe he'll change his mind, maybe he'll find his way. At the moment, I don't really think he's ready, but again, I would say that fate is going to have it, that's where he is heading. So that's the one type of relationship that I would cite. That's already married, already with your Filipino, and most likely you're going to retire out in Southeast Asia somewhere, most likely Philippines. So the next category that I would cite would be divorced, alone, fairly lonely, not particularly happy with the Western dating scene, and exploring the idea of the Philippines. Now, this is a particular group of men, normally somewhere in their sort of late 40s, their 50s onwards, upwards, that are now possibly living alone, may have a couple of kids, probably got the divorce, probably got the alimony going on, and they're really trying to reevaluate their lives. They might have seen a few of the vloggers from the Philippines espousing or talking about life here. That's good, but it makes them vulnerable. So if that is you and you're in that situation, I've seen a couple of examples. You are vulnerable. Do not start sending money to women that you may have made relationships with online. Really try and avoid that. Take a visit out here as soon as you can if you think you've met someone, and be careful, because we hear a lot about women's rights and the way women live and what women's concerns are, but men, less talked about. Men are vulnerable, especially emotionally vulnerable after several years on their own, and they are prime pickings for people who might be predatory, and you just have to look out for this and be a little bit careful. Having said that, most people I meet here, most Filipinos I meet here, are sincere, pleasant, friendly, rooted in a Catholic tradition, which makes them very family orientated, and this still exists. It has undergone changes here. There are things that are different, and I'll probably vlog about those changes in my next vlog. But in general, unless you really make a big mistake and you don't investigate the situation properly with the woman you might be interested in and her family, you might run into trouble. Greater chances you won't. You'll find someone sincere, and good luck to everybody like that. But that is just talking about men who are alone. You've tried to date in the West. It's a disaster in general. The expectations, the attitudes are not appropriate for us, and we start to think, and we start to explore, and we start to look at women who perhaps have preserved their femininity, maintained their family values and their intentions towards men, good intentions towards men. And you start to explore online, as I said, and you might have picked up a few vloggers who talk about this kind of thing, which has drawn you perhaps to this vlog as well. So just to give those guys a shout with a warning, but don't be paranoid. It's all here. You just have to be careful. A better life, I would say, in general, awaits you if you're careful and if you're smart. The third and final category that I would mention that I think is most prevalent is the guys who are probably in their mid-40s, early 50s, still full of quite a bit of energy to enjoy themselves, to put it politely, as trophy hunters. There's a plethora of beautiful women out here, and available women as well. The psychological mismatch with these guys who are kind of trophy hunting might be that the women, even though they're quite young, or perhaps they're single mums, so still relatively quite young, they do not think in the same way as the guys who are trying to play the field a little bit. Maybe they've only been here a year or two. As I say, they've still got enough bounce to the ounce, and they're still out there, and they're quite happy to switch between women. So the first thing is that in a community, in a Filipino community, people talk. They're going to suss you out. They're going to look at social media. They're going to try and understand exactly who you are, what you're doing, and they're going to be quite guarded in the beginning of a relationship. If you continue and you're open and you're sincere, no problem. If you want to play the game, you're going to cause some resentment and bitterness, as you would amongst any community of women, whatever country they're in. So I can think of two offhand, very successful vloggers. I'm not going to name them. You can probably figure it out for yourself if you follow these kind of vlogs. One guy is now no longer in the Philippines, and I'm going to make not a comparison, but I'm going to ask a question. So in my country, in the UK, and actually across Europe, we have got a problem now with young men, for political reasons, have been allowed into the country. They've trashed their ID. They're young men of fighting age, military age. They've come on their own. They haven't brought their families at all. They're basically economic migrants. They masquerade as refugees, and they've been put in the UK. They've been put into our towns and cities, and there are some very unpleasant incidents and security issues, particularly around their treatment of women and the things that are happening at the moment. I'm not going to go further into it. You know perfectly well what I'm talking about if you've got your eyes open at all, if you watch the news at all. So I will sit and I'll watch this and I'll say to myself, predators. They come in, they position themselves in and around schools and communities where there's young kids maybe, and it's a type of predator. Now, I'm not saying it's the same. I'm not even making a comparison, but I am asking the question. Guys who've been here for maybe 10, 15 years, who came full of energy, want to play the field a bit, and they've probably aimed themselves at quite young women because they are beautiful, they're attractive, they are in general available with respect, and they're interested because they're looking like all people everywhere. It's relationships not just about love and companionship, they're also transactional, and it's naive and stupid to think they're not. So young women here, they're happy to accept your approaches. They want to kind of figure out what's going on, and they will if you give them time. So my question is, I'm not making a comparison again, but I had to just say to myself the other day when I was watching this example from what's happening in Europe with this horrible situation going on at the moment, I had to ask myself, is there a massive difference between those guys who are loitering around schools and causing mayhem in these communities in the UK and France and Germany and all these other places where they let them in? Is there a massive difference between that and men who've come here and they position themselves purposely around areas where there's young women, quite young women, purposely to date them? Or are we talking about a much more respectful situation? But it is a sort of a light predatory sort of behaviour that they've continued on. Now these guys have sort of remodeled themselves and they're a bit more careful now, and they've diversified their blogs and their interests in one or two cases. But a lot of people follow them because they're thinking also, I quite like the idea of being out here alone, playing the field, playing the game. But there's a limit to that, and the limit is time. Father Time will catch up with you, and at some point, not saying you've got to settle down, but at some point you might want to reflect on your your values, your intentions, and also how you want to live your life. So again, I'm not making a direct comparison between the guys that come out here. I heard of one guy, maybe it's only a rumour, it came from kind of a troll account, which I find quite amusing. And this troll account, I say, is like a stopped watch. He's right twice a day. The rest of it is garbage, but he's amusing, he's a bit mad, lives in Cebu. You may well know who I'm talking about. but he occasionally hits the mark. And I think maybe it was him, or maybe it was a comment on his side, and he said, one of the guys I'm thinking of, and you might know who it is, you might glean it from the context. One of the guys actually tried to, or succeeded in, getting a room in a college hall of residence. So I'm laughing, but it's actually, not the sort of behaviour that one should condone. So that's sort of the third category of a guy that I would cite. There's a limit to that, and I don't think there's happiness attached at the end of those sort of stories. And I think one of the guys especially is going through a thought process now of kind of, how is it going to play out? How long can I live like this? How long is Father Time going to keep me in a position where I can do this physically? All these things will visit them if they haven't sussed it out themselves in their heads beforehand. So to go back to the actual title of the piece that I've done here, Are You Alone? I was out walking, as an example, in a mall on my own. Wife was somewhere else the other day, and 3 women said, "Are you a vlogger?" I said, "Yes, I'm not vlogging live, but I vlog." They said, "Oh, blah, blah, blah." Second question, and they were in their, they always look a bit younger than they really are. I'd say they're in their early, mid-20s. They said, "Are you alone?" So, "Are you alone?" is part of the Filipino vernacular. Now, you can take this in 2 ways. One is that they're kind of looking and they may be thinking, okay, this guy is of retirement age, but he's reasonable. He doesn't look too unwashed. What's the deal here? Or it's a kind of a networking thing. Maybe they've got an auntie who would like to be hooked up with a foreigner, and they could hook you up. So there's sort of a networking aspect to it. It's not just necessarily because a younger woman might say to you, and it's happened to me, I've been here 3 months at this time. I've had it happen maybe 4, 5 times. Women have just said to me, second question, after any sort of conversation, "Are you alone?" So I think it's coming from 1 or 2 different places, as I said. So that speaks of the availability of and possibility and potential for relationships here a little bit. And that's not even using online dating or anything like that, which I've never actually done. So guys, I would love, and what I'm lacking, I'm getting some numbers on my vlogs, but I'm not getting any engagement. Now, it might be that I've just got one of those horrible personalities nobody wants to engage with, but I really need, and I would really love, and I'm not begging, but I'm asking in a strong way, please make a comment. I'd love to hear your comments. A man cannot exist in isolation. And the isolation is that to just talk and speak and not get feedback. So I would just love to hear from any of you. Smash a like, even more importantly, put a comment in, short, long, say what you like. I'd love to engage. It would be absolutely excellent. And I want to kind of build things in that way. Early days, I mean, I look at my videos, including shorts, 63 videos. Now I look at people, so guy I really like down in Dipolog, or Dipolog, as he says, much to the amusement of my wife. Guy I really like down in Dipolog. Oh look, he's got hundreds of videos. He's built his channel over time. He's patient. I'm not impatient. I just want to make sure I'm doing it in the right way. And I think one of the right ways is to get some engagement. I don't care too much about the numbers at the moment, but I would just love some engagement from you guys. I know there's people who are on a similar journey to me. I know there's people in the Philippines already who can maybe give me wiser counsel on these issues. But overall, I would love, as I say, to reiterate myself, at the risk of repeating myself, I'd love some engagement. So smash a like, pop a comment in. I'd love that. Thanks a lot. So until the next time, guys, this is Cano Live. I'm probably going to come back with something to do with what's changed here in the Philippines. I've been coming out on and off for the best part of 20 years. What has changed, which is quite interesting to have a little look at that. And see you next time. Cano Live, signing out. Ciao.